Hello, everyone. My name is Nathan Harvey. Together with a number of folks here from the DORA team, we're going to take you through a DORA preview, a preview of this year's report. And I just want to start by thanking each and every one of you for sponsoring this year's research and report. We couldn't do it without you, and we're really excited to start sharing these findings with you. We're so excited, in fact, that we have a disclaimer. The information that we're sharing today is confidential and under embargo until we release the report. Our current target date is October 15th. As of, this moment, we're feeling pretty good about that date. But you know how things go when you release things. There's, give us, maybe plus or minus a day or two. But it's just one thing that is certainly clear. Everything that we share with you today should be kept confidential to the group that's here. And everything that we are sharing is based on data that we found in the report. We are in our final edits, so there is a potential that something we show you today is data that we found, but ends up not making it into the final report. The chances of that, I think, are pretty small, but just want everyone to be aware that that is something that might just happen. And with that, I want to just show you quickly our agenda. We've got a couple of things to cover here. Now, this is a preview of the report, as I mentioned. We are not going to go into all of the details of every section of the report, but we do want to cover off on some of the highlights that I think that you will be most excited about. If you have questions throughout, you're welcome to post those questions into the chat. You can also use the raise hand feature to interrupt myself or whomever is presenting at the time if you have a question that is time sensitive and you want to get to that right away. There will be time at the end as well for open discussion and any additional Q&A that we don't get to. If you don't want to raise your hand to ask the question, you can always ask the question in chat. Someone may be able to answer that for you while the presentation is going on. And certainly we invite you to use the chat to share any reactions or thoughts, whatever you have as we go through this. All right, so you've read the agenda, hopefully. I'm going to start off with A Decade with DORA. So we're publishing this year our 10th DORA report. It's been an incredible decade of this research program. In fact, the research program itself has been running for a little bit more than a decade, but who's counting? We're calling this A Decade with DORA, and this is the 10th DORA report. DORA's has been sort of a great leader and trusted advisor to so many people around the world up until now, and we expect that to continue. As you know, DORA is well known for 4 key metrics, those software delivery performance metrics. But also, as you know, DORA is much more than just those 4 key metrics. In fact, we use those 4 key metrics kind of in the center of our model. Performance predicts better outcomes like organizational performance and well-being. But in order to improve that performance and get those things that we're predicting, you have to focus on the capabilities. Capabilities like a climate for learning, fast flow, and fast feedback. And of course, we can expand this model a little bit more so that it is illegible. So that the print is very small and it's harder to read. But this is really about all of the various capabilities that fit into each of those categories, a little bit more about each one of those metrics as well. Now, I think this is really important because it really just sort of demonstrates the depth and the breadth of DORA's research. We truly take a human-first approach to how do we understand how can we help teams get better at delivering and operating software. And we do that for a reason, not just to deliver and operate software, but instead to help drive our organizations forward, to create great user experiences, and to promote the well-being of the employees within our organizations. And over the years, in fact, for the last 3 years or so, we have brought together the DORA community. If you aren't already, this is a great action item for everyone on this call. If you're not already part of the DORA community, you should absolutely be. You can join it at dora.community. You'll see that there's a link to join the community. It is a mailing list, but we also hold regular virtual meetings. In fact, just last week, we held a meeting on value stream management. And coming up very soon, no surprise, we're going to hold lots of open community discussions around this year's report. So if you aren't already in that community group, I definitely recommend that you join that. This is a place for practitioners, leaders, and researchers that are all involved in this space. And as sponsors of this year's report, these are people that you want to be having conversations with. And those conversations truly are two-way. I think that every week I'm learning something from the community. Maybe not every week I'm contributing something back, but I'm always learning something from this community. So I encourage you to join that. The decade ahead. What does the decade ahead look like? Well, DORA is going to continue to be here as that trusted advisor, as that researcher, helping us understand how do teams get better. Our commitment is the same. We will continue to publish platform agnostic research to help teams guide their journey. We'll prioritize those human aspects. And like I said, researching those capabilities that help technology-driven organizations and teams succeed. And of course, when we think about technology-driven organizations and teams, that's just about every organization on the planet today. All right, well, continuing on, let's talk now about some of the things that we found in this year's report. Not surprisingly, we looked again this year at software delivery performance. This is something, the four key measures are something that we look at year in and year out. They've been around since the very beginning of this research study. And just as a quick reminder, we have four keys around software delivery performance focused in two areas, sort of two concepts: throughput and stability. And on the throughput, we have lead time for changes in deployment frequency, and on stability, your change fail rate and your failed deployment recovery time. Now, if you'll recall, what we've found throughout our research is that throughput and stability are not trade-offs of one another. They tend to move together. And this year, that's mostly the same. Ooh, mostly the same. That's a little bit different. So interestingly, I'll just pull up this diagram here. What we see is that the elite performers, or those performers at the top level, and the low performers, the performers with the most opportunity to improve, both see speed and stability kind of moving together. They're equal. They aren't trade-offs of one another. But the two teams in the middle, what we call the high and the medium teams, they are recognizing or realizing some trade-off between throughput and stability. And just to sort of dig in a little bit further on this, I'll show you everything here in the words. It's interesting to see this year. This is the first time we've seen that trade-off really happening. There are a number of things that might be contributing to that, not least of which is delivering software is a complex task that we have to do. It requires organizational collaboration. It requires all the right tools and processes to be in place and so forth. But this is definitely something that's different this year than it has been in the past. Now, between you and me, we had to make a decision about which team should we call high and which team should we call medium. So we made a choice. The teams that are moving faster, although maybe experiencing a little bit less stability, we called those the high performing teams. And the medium teams were moving a little bit slower, but also see a smaller change fail rate. You may note, or you may have noticed, that the failed deployment recovery time is about the same across those two, the high and the medium performers. Now, just another quick word on how we get to these levels: low, medium, high, and elite. Each year, we let the data guide us. We do not set these levels in advance. We collect data from the survey, and then we do a cluster analysis, which basically means, in layman's terms, we throw all the answers down on a big plot, and we see these clusters emerge, clusters that are similar enough to one another, but distinct from the other clusters. And so each year, our definitions of low, medium, high, and elite change. Sort of what is the bar that you have to meet in order to get there? Those are always changing based on the data that we have in that year's study. In fact, sometimes we only have three categories. In the past, we've had high, medium, and low performers, off and on with or without the elite performers. But like I mentioned, at the high and low ends, speed and stability, or throughput and stability, tend to move together. This year, we're seeing trade-offs in that middle range, in the high and the medium categories. But it is still true that the elite performers are able to really significantly outperform the low performers. And you can see that by the numbers here. While you're reading those numbers and being blown away by them, because, wow, this is a huge difference, I just want to also state that one of the other things that we look at each year is industry vertical. So you might think, well, clearly all of the low performers are going to be in like public sector or highly regulated industries. The truth is, and this held true again this year, that industry is not a predictor of which performance level a team will end up in. In fact, we see teams basically in every industry vertical in every performance level. So I would just encourage you not to use industry as a shield or a crutch for why you don't need to improve. But how do you use the performance clusters? Look, unfortunately, we still today see teams saying the way that we're going to use these is we're going to set a goal. Everyone in this organization has to be an elite performer by the end of the year. This is not how we intend for teams to use these performance clusters. The performance clusters are really there as an inspiration to show you that top level performance is achievable regardless of your industry. And the thing that we really want to push for, though, is not elite performance, but rather elite improvement. The teams that show a practice of continuous improvement year in and year out are the teams that end up doing the best. In fact, this idea of elite improvement kind of leans on our tagline for DORA, which you might know as get better at getting better. How do we drive that continuous improvement? Just a final word here on software delivery performance. Like I said, we continue to see speed and stability moving together for the most part. We're going to talk about AI next, and AI adoption and AI product incorporation both seem to have impacts on speed and stability. Unfortunately, they're not improving speed and stability, but instead they're having a detrimental effect on software delivery performance. And I should also note that we've added a little bit of nuance around how we measure these things over the past few years. If you'll remember, last year we changed the time to restore service to failed deployment recovery time. We also improved the precision at which we measure change fail rate. And this year we introduced another question specifically around the time spent on rework. We've always sort of said that your change fail rate is a proxy for how much rework does a team have to do, because when a change failure happens you have to fix that and you didn't plan to do that. So let's measure that out. This year we asked specifically about rework, and we were not really surprised to see that change fail rate and rework basically move together. They are essentially in other words, we kind of proved out our hypothesis that change fail rate is a good proxy for rework. So that's the quick summary on software delivery performance. I'm going to turn it over to Kevin, who's going to take us through artificial intelligence, which, as you'll recall, we first started looking at last year, although it was a pretty shallow investigation last year. This year, I'm happy to say that we've gone much deeper. And Kevin, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Nathan. Firstly, hello, folks. I am Dr. Kevin M. Storr, and I am the qualitative research lead on DORA. As part of that mission that Nathan was sharing earlier to continue focusing on the human aspects of software development, we supplemented our survey with qualitative interviews for the first time in our 10th year report, which is why you're seeing my face for the first time in any DORA presentation if you've been in one before. And adding this component was designed to just help us gather even more insight about developers' work lives into our research program so that we can be really, really responsive to the changing landscape of software development and understand what's happening on the ground in real time. So in 2024, as Nathan was saying, that goal of being responsive to emerging trends and development prompted us to dive really, really deep into the use of artificial intelligence in development, because it's just, I'm sure you've heard an endless amount of reports on this very topic. So specifically, we aimed to understand respondents' adoption of AI, their perceptions of AI, and the extent to which they were incorporating AI into their products at work using these 11 individual constructs. And we're really happy that DORA was able to respond this way and dive deeper because it allowed us to capture data from what ended up being a really unique historical moment, in that we captured some of the very early impacts of AI on development as this paradigm shift unfolded. And that will help us establish a baseline for measuring longitudinal effects going forward, and making sure that we're continuing to be on the pulse as we have these ongoing measures. So stay tuned for some new topics in this year's report, but here's some key highlights. So first of all, we saw that a high number of respondents are reporting that they are using AI in their professional work, and their organizations are shifting their priorities towards the incorporation of AI into their products. A majority of respondents said that they were seeing a shift toward the incorporation of AI in their applications and services. And it seems like competitive pressures and kind of this idea of like a fear of missing out, or we will get left behind if we do not do so, are major drivers of adoption of artificial intelligence. So as I mentioned, a majority of participants were reporting that they were relying on AI for many of their tasks. This is actually a large majority, with almost 76% of our survey respondents saying that they were relying on AI at least in some part for one or more of their daily responsibilities. The most common use cases for generative AI use in development work were writing code, summarizing information. Chatbots, external web interfaces, and embedded in IDE generative AI tools were the most common interaction services for actually interacting with those generative AI tools. And I think I covered everything on that slide, actually, so there is no and to that sentence. And then finally, for me, 70% of respondents who were using AI reported seeing productivity increases as a result of generative AI. And more than a third of respondents described that increase as either moderate or extreme in magnitude of productivity gains. So most respondents said that they had some amount of trust in the quality of AI generated code, which is interesting in light of a lot of hallucinations. But the degree of trust was fairly low. Almost 40% of respondents told us that they had little to no trust in the quality of AI generated code. So we did see some concerns about generative AI's impacts in the future on developers' careers, environment, and society, but it doesn't appear as though those long-term societal concerns were inhibiting any particular respondent's use of generative AI in their work. So that is it for me, and I will pass it over to Derek.
Thanks, Kevin. My name's Derek. This is my third year annoying you all with some of these statistics. So let's sort of dive in. Kevin just did an awesome overview of a lot of the perceptions and the attitudes that people have. We also do something in DORA, which is kind of our, our common strategy, which is we try to see if using something or adopting a practice or establishing this capability leads to downstream impacts, right? So more of a derived understanding of the impact of AI as opposed to a stated one. And that's what we're going to dive into here. We're going to see if people that are using AI, if we see other outcomes change as a function to that use. And we're going to start off really close to an individual, really proximal to somebody, right? We're going to look at changes in like their flow all the way through their time, like where they're spending their time. So this graph is kind of giving you our best estimate of how much a 25% change in AI adoption, how much change in these outcomes that creates, right? So to give you an example for flow, we could say a 25% change in AI adoption is associated with about a 2.6% change in flow. And those sort of error bars there, those uncertainty intervals, are just trying to give you a sense of where we think this plausible value might lie. So the really wide ones kind of suggest we don't know. It could be anywhere. And the really tight ones suggest, hey, we're pretty confident that this effect exists at this magnitude-ish, more or less, right? So let's just go over these findings then, right? So unsurprisingly, or by that I should say, aligned with our hypotheses and our predictions, we see gains in flow, job satisfaction, and productivity. And you might think, oh, a 2.1% increase in productivity for a 25% change in adoption, that seems low. But you could imagine expanding this to 10 developers, to 100 developers, to 1,000 developers, to 10,000 developers. It could actually be like the magnitude could be magnificent when you're looking at this at scale, right? And the reason we expected these three things, let's say flow and productivity. If you think about all the work you would have to do to write some code before, just for example, You might be hopping between internal documents. You might be in chat with people. You might be going on Stack Overflow. You might be getting in meetings to try to figure something out. You're combing through all these disparate sources and you're reading through them, not personalized at all, trying to sort of hack together some kind of answer. But AI kind of does that work for you, at least to an extent. And it summarizes it in one spot. So we weren't surprised when we saw these changes in flow and productivity, even if trust was a little low on it. Given job satisfaction so close, we're not surprised, so closely related to productivity and flow, we're not very surprised to see that that's getting an increase there. There is a little bit of a confusion in these analyses, something that we weren't expecting, admittedly, because there's a value proposition that AI is going to help you. It's going to erase the toil in your life, and it's going to let you focus solely on the valuable work. Not everyone's saying that, but if you look through some marketing material, you'll find it. What we're seeing is toil is relatively unaffected by AI. So on the outcome, time doing toilsome work, you'll notice it's right by 0, and that our uncertainty extends to both sides, meaning we don't really know where this effect lies. We're going to guess it's pretty negligible. And you'll notice time doing valuable work has decreased, about a negative 2.6% decrease in time doing valuable work for every 25% increase in AI adoption. And Kevin, I got to give Kevin credit for this, unless I explain it poorly, then it's my fault. But Kevin, through his qualitative work, was able to suggest that, you know what? This is actually, what we're seeing is AI expediting our ability to get to value. It's helping people realize value faster, leaving kind of a little bit of a vacuum here, right? People are able to achieve their goals maybe a little bit faster, and it's leaving some open time, which I feel is a dangerous thing to say as well, because what happens to that open time? Do we fill it in with more tasks, with more toil? So that's sort of a big question right now. But to sum up this slide that I've been taking too much time on, AI is having expected impacts on flow, job satisfaction, and productivity. Benefits, beautiful benefits there. Surprisingly, or maybe unsurprisingly to you, it hasn't impacted toilsome work, and it has decreased the amount of valuable work. On our next slide, we're going to just go a little bit more downstream, right? So we're going to start looking more into like the developer workflow, I guess you could say, right? And just to be really fast, we're seeing a pretty wonderful story for AI, at least on the surface. We're seeing that if you adopt more AI, you're going to have higher quality documentation quality, higher code quality, higher code review speed, faster approval speed, and a decrease in code complexity. We're not seeing much change in cross-functional coordination and tech debt. There's a little too much uncertainty in our estimates to land on one side or the other for that one. But regardless of those two, this is a really positive story for AI. Now, one interpretation could be that AI is actually improving documentation quality and code quality and reducing code complexity. Another interpretation that's not, they don't need to, they could both exist at the same time. Another interpretation is it's lowering the threshold for what you need to extract value out of documentation and out of code. So it's very possible that the quality of documentation hasn't really improved because of AI. It's just easy for you to get more value out of internal documentation now. Code quality hasn't necessarily improved. It's just easier for you to go through a code base and understand what's going on thanks to AI. So again, they could both exist at the same time. AI could be making gains. It could be helping documentation. It could be helping code, while also helping people synthesize and digest code and documentation. So that's actually a relatively easy story. The next one, and Nathan, I might look at you for a little help here, because I know you're a big fan of these metrics, as am I. But so we're looking at software delivery performance. As Nathan mentioned, we have throughput and stability, and there's no other way to put it except if you adopt AI, the more you adopt AI, a 25% change in AI adoption is going to hurt delivery throughput a little bit. It's a small but not negligible effect. But when you look at stability, it's a huge effect. It's about a 25% change in AI adoption is associated with around a 7.2% decrease in delivery stability. That's pretty profound. That's a lot of, to use the reciprocal, a lot of instability that you're injecting into the software delivery performance. So it kind of makes you think a little bit about the last slide I just showed you with the, code quality is improving, code review speed's improving, and it's getting faster. And it makes you, for me, it makes me be a little bit more charitable to that second interpretation for the workflow, that it's allowing us to get more out of bad code, that it's allowing us to speed through the delivery process. And it gets back to some of Kevin's earlier points about trust. Is there an optimal level of trust that people should have with AI? Are we accepting maybe code into this process or something along those lines? That's not exactly what we would have accepted into this before. Is the speed in our code review time, is that a benefit? Or is that just us, is that going to have downstream ramifications? And so that leads to a broader point. Gains earlier in the cycle, earlier in the process, might lead to detriments later on if we're not careful about it and if we're not paying attention to really high quality bars and things like that. Over reliance on AI potentially. Nathan and Kevin, I don't know if you have, or anyone else, but another interpretation or want to add on to that.
I think the only thing that I might add on to that is that the use of AI, whether it's to improve our workflows or because we're trying to build AI into the applications that we're shipping, it's also new. And so, you would almost expect as you bring in new tools, as you bring in new processes, you're going to see a dip in productivity initially. And hopefully, next year and in your team, you aren't seeing these dips, but instead you're already on the other side where things are starting to improve. Given that how we run our annual report, it's difficult for us to know today, how do we overcome this? But I suspect that it might have something to do with that. And that I also think that the stability piece may be pointing to some quality issues, as you said, Derek, with the code that's generated. And blind acceptance of any code is probably an anti-pattern. We should have the right feedback mechanisms in place so that we know, is this code doing what I expect it to do?
I would just add to that there's also the batch size hypothesis that generating code much faster means that your batch sizes are larger, which is something that we've always held report year after year, that decreases stability, decreases throughput. But given that there's so many hypotheses, I think like the takeaway should be stick with old reliable of like robust reviews and proper checks and balances while we continue to enjoy these productivity gains in the upstream. Right.
Yeah, that's a great point, and it sort of echoes another idea of there's a lot to be excited about, but there's even more to learn about and what's going on here. So the next slide is we're even going more downstream in these outcomes. Now we're looking at organizational performance, team performance, and product performance. How do these change as a function of AI adoption? And we see organizational performance and team performance do see benefits. Now these are super downstream outcomes, so you can imagine all of the mechanisms and ways that this effect might actually come into existence, right? These are pretty far away from a team or individuals adopting AI. So it's worth keeping that in mind. But regardless, we're seeing it's associated with higher organizational performance and higher team performance. It hasn't really helped the respondent's product, right? So sort of two ideas that we have there is that there might be additional technical requirements that go into product performance, like software delivery performance, as we saw before. And further, there might be some aspects of product development, such as creativity and user experience design, that may still, or perhaps forever, heavily rely on sort of the beauty of human intuition and expertise. maybe those haven't been computationally solved yet, which is great for UXers here. So anyway, what we're seeing also sort of points to there's different learning curves. Nathan brought up this great point earlier about we're still really early on in this learning curve. Maybe we figured out some ways to have an impact on organizational performance and team performance, but the learning curve for product performance is a little steeper or a little more drawn out. And to close off the AI section is, and we're gonna have to sort of shift gears from this this form that we've been following, is we've been asking people if they're adding AI experiences, AI-driven, AI-powered additions and services to their application or service, right? So that's pretty much, are you building for AI into your products right now? It's kind of how I think it. So on the right of this graph are people who are, their organization or their team or their application or service, I should say, is putting more effort into building AI in their product. And then on the left of this graph, there are people who haven't really increased that. They're not adding AI-powered additions. And what we're looking at on the y-axis is perceived delivery stability or predicted delivery stability. And what's kind of fun here, but not good, but it's a really, really drawn out pattern, is if your organization or your product, if your application or service is putting a lot of effort into building more AI, there's stability losses, right? This is going to create instability, which isn't surprising given that you're probably incorporating a whole new set of processes into your product building process. If you think about, maybe we're starting to talk about ML ops a little bit here at this point. And yeah, I think that's about it for the AI section.
Awesome. Thank you, Derek and Kevin. And I just want to note that we have published already a couple of things about AI. I just dropped 2 links there in the chat if you're in here, but they're both published on DORA.dev. One is a preview of our AI findings, so that is publicly accessible. And then another is a deep dive into how do we foster trust within developers. And that both includes some of our findings from this year's DORA research, but also some findings from internal research here at Google. Those 2 links, you're welcome to read and share right now. They are not under embargo like everything else that we're talking about today. All right. Of course, this report looks at things beyond AI as well. And in particular, next up, we have platform engineering. So platform engineering is, platform engineering is this emerging trend. Maybe you're familiar with it, where we have teams within an organization that are responsible for the platform. And then applications run on top of that platform. And the platform can provide things like self-service. Maybe the platform provides a testing framework or some audit and compliance stuff. Really, the platform is going to be bespoke and unique for each organization. But we wanted to understand, how is having a platform impacting developer productivity? How is it impacting software delivery performance? And what we found here on this graph, what you can see, is that we're looking at it's very hard to read, the estimated productivity factor. So is this, sorry. So this is developer productivity, I believe, Derek, or correct? Yeah, developer productivity. All right, so we're looking at developer productivity. On the left-hand side, the blue bar is without having platform engineering in place. And the right-hand side, the red bar, is with a platform in place within your organization. And so what you can see here is that in general, having a platform improves developer productivity. And this makes sense. Perhaps that platform is eliminating some of the cognitive load, some of the toilsome tasks that a developer has to take on. Without a platform, you can see it's lower, but it's also way more distributed in terms of the answers that we're seeing. So we're seeing pretty high confidence that a platform is helping with developer productivity. It doesn't mean you can't get the same productivity gains without a platform, because some of those blue dots do overlap. But in general, you're going to see much less productivity without a platform. And this is kind of counter to the sort of you build it, you run it idea that has been around in DevOps for a long time. And instead, if we hand off some of that work to a platform team, we can recognize some different types of productivity gains. Now, the other thing that we'll look at here with platform is how is it helping over time? And we kind of see this this pattern that we've seen repeated over and over again with a number of different things. As you adopt a new practice, you're likely to see some initial gains as you sort of take out the low-hanging fruit, if you will. But then over time, those gains start to dip. They drop off. And it's with commitment and staying committed to the practice that you then start to see those gains start to come back up. And that's exactly what you see here. Those people that are brand new into platform engineering, they're seeing a nice lift in productivity. As time goes by, they see that dip, and then it's starting to return and move up again. So again, a thing to think about with your platform, and this, again, kind of anytime we're doing a transformation within our organization, none of that can happen within a month or 2 months. You have to have some real commitment to this new way of working in order to truly realize the gains that are available. Unfortunately, the story for platform engineering is not all good either. There are some unexpected downsides. In fact, we observed a surprising 76% decrease in change stability to applications being developed and operated using an internal platform. So while there are some real good upsides, there are some potential downsides. And this is not dissimilar to some of the downsides we saw with potentially adopting more AI. And so I think this, again, is kind of a repeated story of smaller changes, faster feedback, continue to be a really important way for teams to work when it comes to delivering and operating software. All right, so that is the platform engineering. Next up, I want to talk about developer experience. And of course, every year we're looking at what are the people's experience within an organization. Software doesn't build itself. Even when assisted by AI, it's still people that are building the software, and their experiences are fundamental to our understanding of what makes a successful organization. So one of the things that makes a successful organization is a stable environment. We asked teams or respondents in this year's survey around how frequently are the priorities changing within their organization. And we found that those organizations who had very stable environments, stable priorities, they had higher productivity, lower burnout, better team performance, product performance, although slightly less delivery throughput and stability. So lower software delivery performance. How can that be? We're not sure. The data can't tell us everything, but one hypothesis that we have is that as priorities start to stabilize, potentially the application that you're working on needs to change less. And so therefore you ship changes to it less frequently. So that's one hypothesis we have there. But a big takeaway from this is that as priorities are stable, teams and individuals have much better well-being. We're seeing really good outcomes from that. Next up, understanding and building for people. Last year was the first year that we really dug into this idea of user-centric software delivery teams. And we found, again, that those teams that are focused on understanding who are our users, how are our users actually utilizing our application, are we building for them, they have really good performance. We're seeing better productivity, lower burnout, higher job satisfaction, higher flow, higher team performance, higher product performance, and even higher delivery throughput and stability. So this is a really good thing. That idea of being user-centric really matters. And this is maybe in counter with or in opposition to some of the ways that we tend to sometimes think about building software delivery teams. We want to create feature factories that grab a feature off the backlog, build that feature, ship it out the door, grab the next feature. A feature factory is almost by definition disconnected from the users. We really want to drive that user-centric approach to how do we build and operate software. And then we also continued our investigation into documentation. This will be our fourth year looking deeply into internal documentation. We continue to see just really, really strong impacts of internal documentation. In fact, what we see here is that the impacts of documentation quality and user centricity on product performance. So as your user centricity increases, so does your product performance, but that can be amplified even more by having high quality documentation. So even with low user centricity, you can push the product performance bar up if you improve your internal documentation. And sometimes we think that maybe that means that you're actually documenting some of those user signals, even though you aren't really thinking necessarily about the user as top of mind. Your documentation is helping you react to some of the things that you learn from them. And then user centricity also alters the software delivery story. So again, we have product performance on the y-axis, and on the x-axis, we have delivery throughput. And those three bars represent high, average, and low user centricity. Now you'll see when delivery throughput is bad or is slow, and your user centricity is low, so is your product performance. But at the same time, you see that when your delivery throughput is low, but your user centricity is high, your product performance is pretty good. And over time, as you improve your delivery throughput, especially if you're not very user-centric, you can see that that's really impacting your product performance. So in other words, you can you can basically keep ignoring your users. Please don't do that. But improve your software delivery performance, and you're going to see better product performance. And when I think about this, I think it kind of leans into something that we've often talked about. Why do you want to deliver software faster and safer? Well, because every change that you make, you don't know if it's working or not until your users start interacting with it. So in other words, actually improving your software delivery performance is a way to help improve your user centricity. We can now try more things with users and get feedback faster, even if we aren't necessarily incorporating that into our own practice. Just the mere fact of delivering software faster gives us more chances at bat, if you will, more experiments that we can run. All right, that's a quick overview of many of the things that are in the report. We have some additional things that we want to share with you today. And for this next section, I'm going to hand things over to Allison Park. Allison, are you there?
I'm right here.
Yay.
All right. So to celebrate our decade with DORA, this year we did some changes to our branding to incorporate the culture of the team here at DORA, as well as what we represent, and a little bit of also, since we are part of Google, to incorporate a little fun into our branding as well. So we are, as you may have seen throughout the presentation already, we have updated our DORA brand, the logo, as well as some colors and graphics to celebrate this year and moving forward. So if you go to the next slide, we have some brand guidelines that you will be able to, that we will send to you so that you can use in any of your assets, anything that has DORA and Google Cloud in it. We are asking that you update it with our new logo. So this is our new logo. It's bold. It's as you can see, we are moving away from calling it DevOps research and assessment, although it still stands for that. But DORA has become very developer team hold name. So when we say DORA, most of our technology teams know what we mean. So we are calling it DORA. If you go to the next slide, you can see different ways of how we are showing our brand. So yeah, the guidelines are all there. If you go just flip through some of our slides here, we have different color schemes. We have some nice graphics that you can use as well. So yes, it's all available for you to start using starting on the 15th. And we are very proud also to show you our DORA community new logo that we'll be using. We are hoping that it represents how we are all in this together with the DORA broader community. All right, some few next steps and key dates. We already sent this out in an email. So thank you for those of you who already have sent us your logo that we will be including into our report. I think there are just a few that we're still waiting for. So if you can please send that over to us, as well as picking your dates for our co-hosted webinar sometime between November and March. We are gathering all of the requested dates and assigning our wonderful authors to those dates, and we'll be replying to you. So yes, if you could please send us your dates, higher chance that you'll be able to get the dates that you prefer. Again, the report is scheduled to be published on the 15th. We are working really hard to get to that date again, but as Nathan mentioned, it'll be plus or minus a few days. And if it does change, you will be the first to know. We will have a blog posted by Google, and the report will be in the same link as we've done in previous years. So that link where we currently have the 2023 report, we'll have the 2024 report. We will send you a promotion kit by the end of this week that includes all of our new logo and anything that you can use for any promotion that you will be doing. If you will be doing any blogs or press release regarding DORA, please do send us that for review. That is a PR guideline for Google Cloud. So please send that in as soon as you can so that we can review it in a timely manner. And that is it on my side. Thanks, Nathan.
All right, awesome. And Robert, to answer your question, yes, the new branding, this new look and feel will be launched simultaneously with the report. So as soon as the report is launched, we encourage you to use the new brands, the new logos, and so forth. And obviously, we're targeting the 15th. And just to be graceful, give myself and my team a little bit of grace. The new branding will absolutely appear in the report when it launches, and it may take a little bit of extra time to get the full new look and feel rolled out to places like Dora.community and Dora.dev. All right, we have about 10 minutes left. So if we have any questions or open discussion that you'd like to have, we will leave you with that. But I want to leave you with just one thought. And this is a thought that I think is really important for every reader of the report to take away. This area of research and the findings in this year's report are complex. We're talking about how do we bring together people and tools and process and technology and change it all and deliver to our customers and have amazing software delivery performance. The truth is, we can get a lot of insights by asking the world through our survey. But those insights have to be contextualized within your team, within your own organization. And so we really encourage you to take our research and replicate it. Focusing on a single team or an organization gives you a number of opportunities for deeper understanding. And when we say replicate our research, what do we mean? Well, I don't necessarily mean go out and run a global survey. What I mean is think about how do these findings apply within your context? In fact, maybe you can take some of our findings and use them as a hypothesis for your next experiment with your team. With that, that is the end of our presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing our slides. I'm going to thank each and every one of you again for being a sponsor for this year's report. We're so excited to have you on board. We're excited to bring this report and this research out to the world and to join you on webinars coming up over the next few months. With that, and with 8 minutes left now, what questions can we answer for you? Jeff.
I actually think somebody else had their hand up before me.
Oh, did
so
they?
I'll play my turn.
All right, thank you. I don't see any other hands up. Had someone raise their hand before Jeff? Now's your moment.
Okay.
All right, cheers, Jeff.
All right. I actually have maybe a couple. The AI adoption findings. That when you're talking about reducing both the appearance that it reduced both speed and stability, Was that across all performance levels? Was there any notable difference across the team performance levels? Elite, high, medium, low. And then also related, if you want to just pile on part 2, how about any distinctions or differences, notably on respondents' level of experience, their role, the team makeup, how long they've been using AI, how big the organization was, anything like that that might distinguish groups?
Derek, I'm gonna let you take that.
Yeah, definitely. I may have missed the second question because I was thinking about the first one so much. But as far as seeing a difference in this pattern across those different clusters, right? Those elite through low, it's actually an analysis we just can't run because those clusters are just taken out of those factor scores. I know that's weird to say, but in short, it'd be like including the same variable into the model twice. So we're just not able to calculate it. That's simply saying the clusters are derived from throughput and stability. So we can't then see if those then interact with itself. It just statistically, it would be a mess. But we can look into, was essentially the same thing if this effect is nonlinear, or maybe if there are certain circumstances or team makeups where this doesn't happen, which is what we're working on a little bit now. But the AI chapter is already 3 times longer than all the other chapters.
Can't imagine why.
Yeah, me either. But yeah, that's I don't know, Nathan, do you want to answer the second question, or Jeff, would you be nice enough to repeat it for me?
Yeah, no worries. It was so on either the firmographics or the demographics in terms of the AI adoption or their experience with it, in terms of any of the findings in there. Were there any notable differences or distinctions in some of those that contributed to what those findings were?
Yeah. So last year, actually, we saw smaller organizations were more likely to adopt AI than larger organizations. Not true this year. That's kind of dissipated. We didn't really see any really substantial patterns in organization size. We didn't really see any substantial patterns in industry, right? We thought maybe some industries would be more likely. Maybe some highly regulated industries would be less likely to adopt AI. We didn't see anything there. From an individual level, we were looking at how much experience you have in a role, how much experience you have on your team. The one thing that stood out there was the more experience you have on your team, not even if you've been in the same role for 100 years, which is impossible in our day. We made that impossible. But if you've been on the same team for 10 years, for example, or the same role for 10 years, but only on that team for a year, you're less likely to adopt AI. So that is to say, the more experience you have working with the people you're working with right now increases the odds that you adopt AI. Maybe that's a comfort level. Maybe you understand the policies at your organization better. It's worth diving into. Also, we didn't see any change in the impact of AI based on experience, right? So one hypothesis you see in the industry is that people with more experience are going to get less value out of AI. People that are new might get more value out of it. That didn't appear. That pattern didn't appear in our data.
Super. Thanks.
Definitely.
Yeah, and I would say, in a similar vein that we've published 2 articles already about AI in advance of the report. Expect to see more deeper dives, not only into AI, but certainly into AI, but also into other areas that we've covered this year. Kathy.
Hi, I just have a question about branding in regards to writing content and blogs. We're already working on several things related to DORA, but that's based on the stuff that's already published. Do we need to seek guidance and permission for those, or is it only specifically related to the 2024 report?
You want to answer that, Allison?
Yeah, it would be only specifically related to the 2024 report.
Gotcha. Thank Thank you.
And to amplify that, and we would encourage you to keep publishing things about DORA all the time. We absolutely love that. It's a net benefit, not just to DORA and every sponsor that's here, but to the entire community. So yes, keep amplifying what you're finding, how things are going with DORA for yourself, for your customers, and more.